Last Tuesday, Pope Francis walked up the monumental steps into St. Peter's Basilica in Rome and approached these two 12-foot-high bronze doors. And he placed his hands on both of these doors and began to push them open, launching the year of mercy. You see, the Pope hopes that a spirit of mercy will blow through the church and blow through world governments, businesses, and schools, in our own homes. And I hope and pray that this will be a year in which that same spirit blows through our own parish, a spirit of mercy and gentleness and kindness. And I pray that that spirit also takes over your own homes and relationships. Now, if you watch the Pope push open these doors, you realize they're heavy. And he's pushing, and it took him a while to push these big babies open. It was as if there was some other force on the other side trying to keep them closed as he's trying to push them open. And as I watched this on YouTube, I thought, I think I know the forces that are trying to keep those doors shut. I think I know what forces want to keep out kindness and compassion and mercy from our world. They're the forces of fear and cruelty. And they are alive and well in our world, in our country. Ever since the shootings in San Bernardino, fear seems to just be in the air. And fear causes us to do crazy and cruel things. And we seem to be constantly reminded of it. You drive down 95, and what does the sign say? See something? Say something. We're reminded constantly we should be on the lookout. And people believe this. There's a sense in which people believe it could happen anywhere. No one's safe anymore. And yet the statistical chances of anyone in this room dying from a terrorist attack are so slim, whereas the chances that every single one of us will die from a car crash, cancer, or heart disease is really high. We should be worrying about our blood pressure and our cholesterol, not a terrorist attack. Fear causes us to do crazy things, terrible things. One of the big things that fear causes us to do is to develop scapegoats, to produce scapegoats. And this country has a long, ugly history of producing scapegoats. For most of this country's history, African Americans have been scapegoats. Certainly the Jews, and any immigrant who does not look or sound white is liable to be made into a scapegoat in this country. It's a long-standing national sin we have yet to repent to. And so we live in a culture of fear and cruelty. And this spirit of fear and cruelty can often dominate a lot of our national institutions. Let me give you one example. Our current criminal justice system, especially since the war on drugs, is particularly cruel. Do you know that in 1970, there were approximately 300,000 people in prison? Today, we have 2.3 million people in prison. Nearly 6 million people on parole. And many states have abolished parole. In many states, the possibility of food stamps or public housing are gone for any man or woman, and of course their child, who is convicted of a drug conviction and served their time. What we've done to people who suffer from substance abuse is declared a war on them. And so we live in a very cruel time. Just get on the internet, because the internet gives free rein to fear and cruelty. And look at online commentary for anything. It can be a newspaper article, it can be a restaurant. And you will see a shocking level of cruelty and meanness. There's a website that high school kids are getting on right now. It's called After School. It's anonymous. Similar to the one middle schoolers are getting on, which is called Ask FM. And these anonymous websites allow kids to get on them, and they say incredibly cruel and mean things to each other with no one knowing, because it's anonymous. And unfortunately, you all know these same spirits of cruelty and meanness plague our schools and homes. So this morning, we're left with this question. What can we do to help Pope Francis keep these doors of mercy and kindness open against these forces of cruelty and meanness? What can we do? Well, if you paid attention to our second reading, Paul's writing to the Philippians. He's in prison, and the Philippian Christians are being persecuted by the Romans. And he says something astounding that I think gives us a clue as to how to be a people that can keep these doors open. He says the following. I think it's astounding. He says, become known as a people of kindness and gentleness. This is a tiny Christian community in a Roman colony. And he says to them, I want you to develop a reputation for being kind and gentle. Paul wants every Christian community, every one of us here, to develop a reputation, to become people who are known for our kindness and our gentleness. And that's today's message. In a culture of cruelty, we, as followers of Jesus, must develop the capacity to be kind and gentle. And I think the first thing we have to do is realize this is a Christian virtue. Gentleness and kindness are deep, profound Christian virtues. To be a Catholic, to be a Christian means that you are kind, that you are gentle, especially towards the stranger, especially towards the person who does not look like you. And I don't have to tell you that this requires deep, deep conversion. Because you see, our society, it trains girls to be catty and cruel about every single faux pas, fashion faux pas, and weight gain. It trains boys to be tough and rough and callous and cruel. It doesn't train them to be gentle and kind. Now, to be gentle and kind, it doesn't mean that you're a wallflower and everything goes. No. You can be gentle and kind and still stand up for your moral convictions. And it doesn't mean that you can't be confident or aggressive or competitive. Oh. Gentleness and kindness is the ability, it's the spirit-empowered ability to recognize those situations and those people who need you at that moment to be kind and gentle. And it means you have the capacity to do so. In other words, what the gospel is calling us to do today is to develop another gear. We have the gear of being a wise guy, and I'm one of them. You have the gear of being aggressive and competitive, and those are all good things. But the gospel calls us today to develop another gear that you need to be able to shift into at certain times. A gear of kindness and gentleness and compassion. So we're faced with a tough question. Are you kind? Are you gentle? And I assume perhaps the answer you give is, well, sometimes, with some people, in certain situations. And you're being honest. I'm being honest. And those times when we're not kind and gentle and compassionate, well, we got to say we're sorry. A couple of years ago, I made a point of calling up my sisters and apologizing for being mean to them when I was younger. Because I didn't have that gear when I was younger and the older brother. And I said sorry to them. And that may be a first step towards expanding that capacity to be kind and gentle. So, are you ready to help Pope Francis keep open these doors of mercy and compassion? Yes. That was a really weak response. Okay, you need help. I understand that. So let's first call down the spirit of compassion and gentleness. Oh Lord, fill this church and every heart here with your spirit of compassion and gentleness. Fill those parts of us that are hard and cold and resistant with your spirit and capacity to make us kind and gentle, even when we don't want to be. So now, filled with that spirit, are you ready to help Pope Francis keep those doors open? Yes. Good. All right, because your homes and our schools and our businesses and our worlds desperately need this spirit and our kind of action. Go and do it. Amen.